and welcome to Tuesday Talks. I'm Lisa Grainger, a Zimbabwean-born writer and editor and fellow African lover based in London, and it's a pleasure to be with you in the company of so many incredible women and hopefully some incredible men listening in who've been brave enough to listen into this great all-female Tuesday afternoon in Durban. August is Women's Month in South Africa, and to celebrate the role that women play in tourism throughout Africa, Suzanne Bailey-Koop, who normally hosts these wonderful Tuesday talks, thought it would be apt to have a gathering of us to talk about some of the inspiring women in the industry who've been role models, who've been brilliant to all of us, to discuss some of the changes we've seen and to try and push through some of the changes we want to see. Hopefully it will be illuminating and educational, and hopefully create a strong network of women who can work together to build better role models and help other women who are coming up in the business today. First, I'd like to introduce you to some of the 5 women we have on the panel today, each of whom is a powerhouse in the travel industry. First up, we have Wendy Rankin. Wendy is sales director for Experiential Safaris and has been in the tourism industry for over 20 years, working for industry giants like Wilderness Safaris and the Thorny Bush Collection. In 2012, together with their husband, they found the Machaba Safaris. They now have 6 camps in Botswana and 5 in Zimbabwe. Next up, we have Stella Bethany. Stella is the co-owner with her husband, Chris, of Azura Retreats and lives between Southern Africa, Channel Islands and France with their teenage children. Before she embarked on building camps in Africa in 2007, the British-born Stella was a banker and held senior director post at Rand Merchant Bank. She and her husband now run 3 beach hotels in Mozambique. Our third panelist is Nina Scott. Nina was born in Thailand and lived in 9 countries, mainly Asia and Europe, before settling in South Africa. She's worked in commerce and business and met Don working in the aerospace industry in the late 1990s. They decided to take a break and find a better life with a purpose. They bought Tanbatula in the Timbavati, adjoining Kruger National Park in 2009, where they have 2 camps and a homestead. Next up is Tina Robonte, the owner and MD of Royal Chundu, the Relay and Chateau Lodge on the banks of the Zambezi. When it was Tina's father who first saw the potential of the Royal Chundu property and purchased it with hopes of turning it into an exclusive lodge. Tina's eye and business acumen have helped to make it one of the most favourable on the Zambezi, and she now lives there and homeschools her 2 sons. And last, by no means least, is the powerhouse that's Suzanne Bailey-Koop, who is normally at the helm of these popular Tuesday talks. Suzanne has been involved with the marketing of hotels and safari lodges for almost a quarter of a century and took ownership of Classic Portfolio in 1999, which she's grown to be one of Africa's most well thought of representation companies. When she's not traveling around, as she is now on a road trip around South Africa, and where she's homeschooling her children, she's in Franschhoek. So hello, fellow women, and lovely to see you all.
Thank you, Lisa.
First of all, I think we should start with some positive thoughts. Can each of you tell me briefly which woman has been a particular role model to you and why? Suzanne, let's start with you.
I have, I think, quite a few role models in my life, but I think the first one would have to be Pippa Cobb-Hankinson, who I bought Classic Retreats from then, way back when. So I started working with Pippa in 1996, and I then bought the business from her in 1999, and she has been the most extraordinary role model to me for my whole working career, and we are still great friends. She's also the publisher and founder behind Bloodlines and is very involved in conservation work all across Africa, and just the most extraordinary person. And then the other person very close to that, who was one of the first clients of Classic Retreats then, has been Susan Huckster. And so when I bought Classic Retreats, Le Quartier Français was then a member. And Susan has just been the most amazing, amazing friend and confidant. She's a hugely inspirational woman. And actually, I landed up living in Franschhoek because of Susan. I decided I wanted to get back to South Africa. I didn't know where to send my children to school. And just over lunch, Susan had organized my whole life. And I landed up living across the road from her. So she's been another really inspirational person. And then somebody, sorry?
No, go on.
And the other, there've been a few other, but the other person who I talked to extensively and actually through this lockdown has been an amazing confidant, has been Lindy Rousseau at Sangita. I have the highest regard for Lindy and the way she thinks and the way she sort of engages with Africa, and her marketing ideas are absolutely extraordinary. So she's been a really strong friend for many years, but especially I'd say over the last few months as well.
Brilliant. Tina,
yes.
What about you?
Well, Suzanne has to be right there in the leading the troop of ladies. She says things that need to get said. She's been consistent in our industry by saying all the things that need to be said. I don't think you should be reined in at all, but that's just me. And Susan Huckster's up there for me as well as a great ally and somebody who you can always call on through it all. And globally, Zita Cobb from Fogo Island, who I use as a massive role model in my economic nutritional label, that I kind of keep myself accountable and remind myself to keep getting off the mountain, and others must climb up that mountain, not myself. And Zita Cobb kind of has been my guiding light with that. Yeah, simply put.
What about you, Stella?
So, I mean, the bulk of my life was in business, where there were very few women at my level or doing what I did. So there wasn't really a role model there. I was perhaps a role model to others, maybe. Although I blame Maggie Thatcher and her privatization of BT for getting me on that bandwagon in the first place, because I was going to study medicine until she arrived. So I suppose mine started with the Iron Lady, not that that's what I would like to necessarily associate with. And then in the tourism side, in the initial days when we were setting up Azura, when I knew nothing about hotels, I mean, I was just thrown in at the deep end. And I started doing the US circuit and seeing all the agents over there. I used to travel with the lovely Liz Biden, who'd been doing it for years before me, and she used to hold my hand, take me shopping in the little breaks between meetings, it has to be said. And she really showed me the ropes on how to do that side of things. So it would be Liz.
Wendy.
So basically, the first person that come to mind would be my mom. She's my biggest supporter. She may not understand what it is that I'm getting myself into, but she is always behind me 100%. In terms of role models in tourism, it's very hard for me to pinpoint one particular person. I believe every single day there is somebody that crosses my path, or people that I've worked with closely over the years. My team at the moment, we learn from each other extensively daily. And I do believe we are role models to one another.
Yeah. Thank you. And what about Nina?
Well, I'm going to echo a little bit what Wendy just said now, because I mean, I have met many, many extraordinary women all over the world, but my most extensive journeys in my life have been travel with my mother when we lived in all the different countries around the world, and she was instrumental in teaching me about immersing myself in each of the different cultures that we lived in, and learning the languages and understanding the history and the people. My mother was instrumental in guiding me through that journey in my life, which I think has given me a very in-depth skill to understand people and culture really, really well. Yeah. But also echoing a little bit what Wendy said as well, is that the women that I work with every day are the most inspiring women to me. Some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are single mothers, and some of them are empowering themselves against all odds, and they become successful women against all odds. And these women are constantly challenging the status quo, often defying cultural boundaries and social norms in order to lead their own ventures or to become the best that they can be. And those are the women that truly inspire me every day.
Yeah, brilliant. How do you think women's roles have changed within the travel industry since you started, Stella?
Well, for me, I mean, as I say, I came from an incredibly male-dominated environment before I joined travel.
Yeah.
So I always found it had far more women than anything I was familiar with. I mean, it's an industry where women thrive and survive better than a lot of them out there, I think. So
Yeah.
in the years that I've been working, I guess there's more hotel owners. I mean, look at us on this panel, more business owners than there perhaps were in the early days, and girls that are confident to get into those senior roles and those senior positions in travel that may not have always been possible in the past.
Yeah, Suzanne, what do you feel? You've probably seen a huge change, because I remember since when I first started writing about travel, especially in Africa, there were hardly any women at all, other than people, you know, running the food or the catering or, you know, helping in the background. But there certainly weren't women running camps like this. How has it changed since you started?
I think the biggest difference has been the professionalization of this industry. It has always been an industry with really low barriers to entry, so anybody's able to get into it, which is a wonderful, wonderful aspect. But when I started, one person would do everything. The person would own the camp, run the camp, do the reservations, do the cooking, do the marketing, and do all of those things. And you didn't need to be that professional in those days. You could kind of just wing it and hope some guests arrived.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that commercially driven either. And the biggest change that I've seen has been the strategic way in which we're taking the industry and how women's role in strategy of developing areas and developing businesses and driving businesses to be more commercially viable and sustainable has been a great sense of growth for women. And things like the marketing side, branding, all that creative side has really given women a voice in this industry as well. It's not just being in camps or running a travel business. It's opened up to a wider range of women.
Particularly
Tina, Tina, do you see a lot of that? You know, you're running your own camp in the middle of the Zambezi. You know, there are a lot of men around. How do you feel running a camp? Is it easy for you?
Well, so I being uniquely away from the madding crowd, I've kind of done whatever I wanted to do. And we've got 76% of our entire management team and HODs are female, and Zambian female, which is unusual in Africa and unusual in rural Africa. But I think when you are a woman-led business, you don't think in vertical hierarchies. Women work in lateral hierarchies in communities, and whether it's having women positioned in places of power, whether it's all of our services and supply businesses that are all empowered, female empowered businesses as well, that we work closely with in running Royal Chindu, where that 74% of our income goes back to our local communities. And I think it's because we're in the middle of nowhere that no one's watching, and we've been able to do that. If that's, you know, go below the radar. But I do think the role of women have changed from that flat.
Nina,
the role of
sorry.
No.
Sorry?
Tina, go on.
No, I'm saying that role of women has definitely evolved from the fluff to from the airline industry, where you've got the trolley dolly to the pilot, and there are more pilots coming through. Not enough. There still has a lot to be done.
Yeah. And Nina, how do you find it? Because you're in the Kruger, you know, and the Kruger's been seen predominantly as a very male macho environment. Have you found trouble sort of running your own camp there?
No, not for me in particular, or Don and I. I think, you know, we also have employed about 50% of our staff are women. You know, it's a lot of the guiding side of things, of course, is very male dominated environment, and I find that is a difficult area for women to get into. It's you know, that's a hard thing, and it's a hard thing for people to change their perceptions around female guides or in leadership roles out there in the wilderness. I think that's a little bit of a difficult space. But basically, you know, in my opinion, you know, women assume many roles in tourism as leaders and innovators, business owners, guides, teachers, and of course tourists. But women account for the majority of tourism global workforce. But so many of them tend to work in low-paying, informal, low-status positions, and I'd like to see that change. Because all over the world, some of the biggest, most significant changes in tourism are being led by women. And women are leading the ecotourism and the socially responsible travel. And I think that's where we truly add value better than any man out there. I'm sorry to say that, men there, you know, but we really do have the heart for that. It's in our DNA and we do that well. And it's precisely this kind of work that will encourage more women to enter the tourism industry. And so often these initiatives become the real game changers. So I would like to see more powerful positions in our industry.
And in your own business, Nina, how do you help to empower local women?
So we have the Tanda Tula Foundation, which we established about 8 years ago, and it started as an adult literacy program, and it has grown really substantially since then. It came about because I needed to find a way, and how could I possibly motivate women who worked for me, and I'm talking about older women from the age of 50 and older, who had communication issues, who couldn't speak English properly, and we always had to work through interpreters. They do pretty difficult jobs like scullery and cleaning toilets. I mean, this is not stuff that you can inspire staff, you know, how to clean a toilet in an inspiring way. There's no way to do that. So the only way I could do that was through education. So we started an adult literacy campaign where we currently have 28 students. They're all staff members, but the majority of them were women over the age of 50, and all of them were illiterate. And what's happened is now they're completely literate. They can read and write, they can communicate in English. And what's happened is that they have empowered themselves through education, and they are now independent women who can manage their own lives. They can check their WhatsApps, they can read a bank statement, they can make a phone call without having to ask for help. They can talk to us directly in English. And what's happened with that, it's a domino effect, that this has inspired their daughters and inspired their granddaughters to also take education very seriously. And what I'm seeing is that since we started the adult literacy program, we actually have started to hire a lot of their daughters and their granddaughters into our companies.
Fantastic.
And what we're doing now is we're empowering them as well through different education tools.
Yeah. Wendy, there are now quite a few, or a lot more female guides and rangers and conservationists, but not enough. How are you encouraging women to get involved where you are?
So basically, we operate in the two countries, Botswana and Zimbabwe. There is still a huge stigma attached to in their cultural beliefs. It's quite amazing. Just to put things into perspective, Machaba employs about 400 staff members within the two countries. There are about 180 female staff members in and amongst the 400. 70% of those women are general managers. The females in Zimbabwe and Botswana are extremely well educated. They don't want to be guides. Look, we upskill male, female, any roles. I mean, we have fabulous stories where we have someone starting off as a housekeeper and working their way up to front of house. So in any field as a company, whichever direction they want to go into, we encourage it. So as I said, in Zim and Botswana, the females are definitely more educated. So with that stigma attached because of the cultural beliefs, I don't think they want to be guides. You know, they believe that's what their fathers did and their brothers should be doing that. Women, and certainly in our camps, majority of them are managers.
Yeah. Stella, do you have problems, because you work on, you know, generally quite small islands in quite remote places. Do you have trouble getting women to come and work for you?
Yeah, I mean, culturally in remote Mozambique, certainly, which is where we operate, it would be the norm for women to not be the provider, to be out there working. They would be at home being the homemaker. And so that is a challenge. But within Mozambique itself, I think one of the things that first impressed me about the country is at government level, a lot of the people there are women. It's probably got more women ministers, more women senior government people than anywhere else. And I think that's that's something that's happened more and more as we've been operating in the country, and that inspires women to want to get into senior positions. Then within our own organization, you know, you've got me, and I'm very much on the ground. We've always had very senior staff who are women, and our Rainbow Fund officers, which is our charity, is generally women. And so that also provides a role model and something for people to see, that they can see women actually taking important roles in the workforce. We set up, through our Rainbow Fund charity, we set up a school on the island. Now, again, it's a primary school, and girls would usually leave that school and then go into the home. But we are funding a number of students into senior school on the mainland, which is a boarding school away, to try and enhance and grow that, to stop the fact that education sort of stops at a certain stage and they can't carry on. So that, I think, will help. And then the last thing that we've done is we recently opened up a health clinic on the island. And that, of course, has made a huge difference to women in their lives medically, in terms of being able to assist with and prevent teenage pregnancies, which tends to be the first thing that drags women away from the ability to get into the workplace, for example. We've got a birthing clinic there, a well baby clinic. So all that side of things is also improving and taking great steps that enables and facilitates those women to be able to come into our organization.
Yeah, that really helps. And Tina, what about you on the ground? What things have you got to try and help women come into your business and work with you?
So my kind of aim is to try and get as many people into stakeholding, not just positions of employment. So what I've kind of actively done is we work together in our management team becoming shareholders, our management team becoming stakeholders. And in terms of our services and suppliers, going back to that nutritional label story, with regards to our services and suppliers and all of our supporting businesses, to give people the opportunity to have businesses that spin off Royal Tundu. And for me, that's the minute people have power and ownership of their own experience, then the story becomes very different, and it becomes a Zambian story or African telling African stories, not superimposed stories by somebody in a place of nepotism.
And is that something that you have been able to tell other camps about in your area and influence how they operate?
You know, it's a very interesting, I'm all about collaboration. If anyone, I've got many tattoos, but I think I should definitely have, there's only abundance in collective. So I definitely would love it emulated everywhere. However, our industry is, there are a lot of egos and a lot of old ways of doing things. And I'm a little girl who doesn't know much. So another great influencer was Nikki Fitzgerald for me, who always used to say to me, just focus on your own fire and you share and do what you want to do. But I'm not sure anyone would be listening to a crazy chick sitting in the middle of nowhere.
Even a creative chick who's actually managed to get her camp up to one of the best on the Zambezi.
Well, you know, my saying is also bravery and stupidity is the same thing. It's just a matter of you never know which one it is until the end. So, no, it's not my own idea. So I took the idea of my economic nutritional label from Zeta Carb at Fogo, which I think we should all be held accountable into where it's going, who's telling the story, who's in the position of power. So if I can copy somebody else, I would wish that we could all copy and be accountable that way. But I'm certainly not forcing it on anyone. I just think it's a great way for self-audit.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, it was one of the things. I rarely put words up on my Instagram account. I'm a very picture person, and Instagram's a very picture place. But I took a picture of one of her little audits and put it up on Instagram, because I don't think if people know what an audit looks like of your carbon footprint, and you can show them. It's really simple. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And
her, she's fascinating because it's not about yourself. It's about what you do with your opportunity. And my mother-in-law's got this great saying where she says, what do you do with a chance? You change the world. So we are all in positions of, most of us are in positions because of who we were born to or who we married. For instance, just to be controversial, but what do you do with your chance, and how do you hold yourself accountable, and how do you change that egoic old way of doing things? And where does your money, for me it with Zita was, where does her money go? What are you doing with every cent that you earn, and how are you changing the lives of others? So the parable for me is, don't climb to the top of the mountain, you sit at the bottom and show people the way to the top. And
that's a great way forward. Great way forward. Suzanne, what do you think will be the biggest challenge for the next generation of women behind you?
I see more opportunities for the next generation of women than I do challenges. I think many of us have plowed through challenges ahead. And I think that any woman's challenge is going to be her own thoughts on her own self-worth. And I think if you can actually stand up and be brave as a woman and live to your purpose with absolute passion, I think that there is a great opportunity for any woman that wants to sit forward at the table. And it goes to that book that Sheryl Sandberg wrote about lean in. And I think as a woman, if you just lean in and take part in the conversation and be brave about who you are and what you have to contribute, should be no challenges for you. And any man that tries to stop you just isn't worth his salt, quite honestly. So we shouldn't face those challenges from our level. I think one of the other biggest issues, though, is going to be just access to education. I think so many women haven't had, much education, many levels, and access to opportunities. But I tell you, from my business, I only employ women, so there's no challenge there whatsoever.
No, nothing at all. Actually, I think another inspiring thing I learned, I saw recently, was I'm a big supporter of Camfed, which is the organization to send African orphan girls to school. And that was started by a woman called Anne Cotton. And she started really small by having a cake sale to raise some money to send some girls who were sitting outside her gate to school. Mm-hmm. And then some more girls came along and said, well, we want to go to school too. So she got some of her friends. And last year it sent something like 40,000 girls to school. Now, the idea of it was a tiny little idea, and she was doing the right thing. And she knew she was doing the right thing. And she put her passion behind it, and she influenced other women to come forward and also do it. And it's now this great, big, fabulous organization which does great things. So sometimes you've got to be brave and think, well, I think this is the right thing, and I think I'm going to put my passion into it. But let's be brave and go for it.
I think the other big thing is to realize, and women tend to do this, we are quite happy to start small. Mm-hmm. And we're just happy to make a little impact and let it grow. And sometimes other people want to just make a massive impact. And it's easier actually just to make little bits of impact and layer those bricks one at a time, as opposed to trying to build a house all at once. And when you do that, you actually morph and change, and you build the right house in the end. So I think women have this nurturing, slower approach, which I think is a great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, so there's that, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. Okay, and I 100% agree with that. Personally, and I know there's a question that we've discussed, but I think just carrying on from what you said, personally, I believe there are many hidden assumptions that keep women from living larger. So, for example, if you don't want to fill the role of being a CEO in a position as a company because you're a full-time mother and you have a full-time job. I'm not judging anybody. I strongly agree that if you want something bad enough, you be consistent, persevere, keep working hard, as cliched as whatever that may sound. Yeah. What's key to your success is to identify your own unique priorities. The first step is women need to adjust their mindsets, I think. They should be open to working and balancing their family, work and social lives. But yes, if your dreams aren't big, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. that's
what,
how.
Wendy, what goals have you got for the future? What are your goals for next?
So basically, we have the preschool projects, our social and our social responsibility stuff that we run up in Zimbabwe together with Blessing, which I do, and then Leti Hatsi, which is our Motswana local partner. We've got our first preschool in one of the remote villages, and my goal is to do that on a full-time basis. We have 12 villages where we need to fulfill a promise which we made to them that we will complete another 12 preschools in the next 4 to 5 years. And that's what I'd like to do.
And Nina, what are your next goals to in your business?
I have a lot of goals. There's a lot happening. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to zone in on one particular thing that's really been on my mind lately, as I was invited to be part of the Education for Sustainable Development in the Greater Kruger Canyon Biosphere organization last year. And I really look forward to becoming more involved with this incredible organization. Basically, the purpose is to provide a platform for coordination, alignment, and co-learning in environmental education across all key stakeholders in our communities, which is the communities, conservation, education, government, sandparks, tourism services, and destinations. And basically, the objective is to really promote inter-institutional learning, to improve collective practices that jointly inform other sectors about common education for sustainable development practices, and to work collaboratively to also track the impact of our efforts in these landscapes. I feel that there are so many of us with all the right intentions are trying to be sustainable, trying to give back to our communities as best as we can, but we need to audit that process properly. We need to have a system where we don't keep often, and this is the case in our area, you find that certain pockets of our communities are really being supported by so many lodges, and other pockets are not being supported at all. So, I mean, in some extreme cases, primary schools get repainted 6 times in the first quarter, you know, by random lodges. I mean, this stuff's got to stop. It's got to be coordinated. It's got to be well distributed, and it has to be in very serious collaboration with community. We need to find our relevance as luxury products and a luxury industry on the doorstep of a very impoverished community. We need to become relevant there, and the only way we can do that is by building very strong bridges and understanding truly what our communities are all about, and how we can cross-pollinate our services and our knowledge.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been very pleased about during lockdown is that some camps, mainly in Eastern Africa, have told me that they've had a lot more local people coming to visit because the international guests aren't able to get in. That's opened up in a way the camps because of special offers and things, and that local people have been coming in and learning more about the safari business, having their first experience of safari. Do you think that this sort of thing might actually encourage more women to look at the business in a way they've never seen before, and to think actually they would like to work in it, or they would like to bring their kids into it, or they'd like their children to work in the industry, whereas they didn't really know it before? Stella, what do you think?
I'm probably the worst person to be asking that question to, because in Mozambique we've got next to no domestic market. So perhaps one of the others wants to answer that question. But I mean, I was just thinking what you were talking about in terms of goals, and I didn't tell you where ours were, but maybe that actually is our biggest goal right now, is just to get people back into our hotels. You know, in Mozambique, we're not in the situation like there are in many other countries where you've got furloughs and tours and government schemes and so on supporting staff. There's absolutely zero government support within Mozambique. And obviously a lot of people reliant on tourism, which is one of Mozambique's biggest industry. It employs more than 60,000 people. and getting back into having tourists again. So one of our major goals is we've got a group actually, and it's sort of luxury hotel owners, and we chat often, and bizarrely it is mainly women actually who are running all of these hotels, is to try and get Mozambique on the map as a sort of a standalone destination, because relative to some of the colleagues on this chat, we think our borders are going to open again on the 1st of October and we'll be able to get travellers back in. So we're hoping I'm struggling with finding creative ways of twinning us with products that we're not normally associated with. Like usually people just think South Africa and Mozambique. So I'm scheming private jets and hopping around African itineraries and all sorts of things. So those are my current goals. But yes, in terms of the local market, very little in Mozambique. Can't answer that question for you.
What about Nina? Have you seen more local?
But quite similar to Stella, it's only just started to pick up now, but in a similar way, I mean, domestic market in South Africa is very small because there is only a very tiny percentage of our population that could afford, even with the slashed rates, to come to destinations like ours. But so basically, I mean, in answer to your question, the COVID crisis really has forced us into slashing the rates and making it accessible to local markets. And whilst this is really essential for our current survival and the survival of the hundreds of thousands of people that we all employ, it's not enough to transform our industry to become more local and African friendly. Yeah. You know, I mean, this is a bit of an issue that I've been discussing already now with Suzanne for a number of years, and we feel that we really need to see a lot more transformation in our products, in our offering, in our safari structures, and we need to see a lot more inclusive behavior and the way we run our businesses for it to really be attractive to the African market. There is a growing African market on the continent. The younger generation is starting to move around the continent more. They do have the money to come to us, but the impression is that our luxury destinations are really just a white privileged destination for people with lots of money. Mm-hmm. And that story has to change. Yeah. And I know that we're all marketing to international markets, but the more we tell that story about come to safari and we'll take you on a pioneering experience in time, we are perpetuating a kind of colonial message that needs to change. If we want to attract domestic markets anywhere in this continent, we need to start transforming ourselves properly, becoming more relevant to our communities, and we need to speak to the language they understand. We need to speak a much more modern version of the safari experience, if that makes any sense.
Are there any mentorship programs in any of your camps or any of your businesses where you go to schools that maybe might not have access to safaris, and you say to smart, bright young women, look, we will take you into our business. This is what we do. We need women like you. So when you're leaving school, why don't you think of coming to work for us? Does anyone know of any?
So we have a graduate program in place in Botswana where we take them, and then we also have the under 25 graduate program, and they come into the camps, they get paid. After 3 to 6 months, they can decide. They go into various sectors within the camp, and they'll go into the storerooms, they'll go into front of house, they'll even go into the office in Maun. And after 3 to 6 months, they can decide whether they want to stay with us or move on. But it's quite great because they get experience in all these different sectors within the camp. That's what we basically have running. Can I just comment on the local travel? So this is quite interesting. So for Botswana and Zimbabwe, the last 6 weeks we've opened up to the local market, and it's been absolutely amazing. The locals have never had the opportunity to travel to our camps, and if I tell you, every single weekend it's been completely full.
Fantastic.
What's been interesting though is that it's a very different type of travel, and this is where the future of travel goes into. There's a lot of multi-generational travel, families, huge families. We see it all the time, and obviously longer stays. So you'll see families going into Moana pools, for instance, as Zimbabweans, they'll be 8 at a time, families of 8 staying for a week at a time. It's been absolutely fantastic. They have the opportunity and they could never afford it.
Yeah, and do you think that has influenced their view of conservation and tourism as a whole?
I'm sure it has. I mean, I just take my boys, for instance. I mean, from a very young age, traveling to local properties, and 100% agree that's where their passion for the bush comes from. And I'm sure that's the direction they'll go into one day, not because of my husband or I. That's something that they will do because that's what they're passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I know from having talked to women all across Africa, the very few that have got into conservation all said that they were taken in on a school trip, or they were taken in on a college trip, or they were taken by a relative. But it's very rare that lots of school kids and lots of young women across Africa get to see the safari business. And maybe there is an opening to try and bring young women into the business in a more managerial and high level role. Suzanne, what do you think?
Lisa, I was just thinking, I actually employed Katie Durham from Hamilton, who's Scottish, and who'd worked in Zambia. And many of the camps go to Zambia, Kenya, Tanzania, all of that sort of thing. You find a lot of foreign girls and young guys coming in and wanting to work in the camps because they had access to do it with their parents at some stage in their lives. And as a South African, I've never been on safari with my parents. It wasn't something, okay, we did do the Kruger self-drive and stay in a rest camp that did not invite me going to tourism at all. But we didn't have access to this. And now that I've got older and I've had access to things, I've been able to take my parents on safari and change their perception. But we need to make our experiences about conservation opportunities in the tourism industry far more accessible to people who live in Africa. And we need them to feel completely part of the growth and future of this industry, and how that builds brand Africa, how it builds confidence in us as countries and as a continent. And we need those people to want to seek out those opportunities and not necessarily want to leave and go and work in different countries. And that we need, I think if you can go on safari and be truly connected to Africa, you cannot possibly want to leave. I think it gets into you in such a way you can't go anywhere. So we'll always stick here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here.
But that's because you've got a quite high level job, you've got your own business, you're stimulated, whereas lots of young women who come into the safari business are not. You know, they're cleaning and they're cooking and they're doing that sort of thing. And maybe there is an opportunity now to try and bring more women into higher management roles or higher level roles and try and integrate them into the business. I don't know, Stella, what do you think, having been in business?
Yeah, I mean, at Azura, we've just always had the philosophy that I'm not looking at you whether you're what color you are, where you're from, or what gender you are. I mean, that's where I start off. I don't specifically stress, can you do that job if you're a woman or not? You know, I mean, our dive instructors have typically been women. That's generally a heavy lifting type of job that you might not associate women doing, but that's been the case. And at Azura, you know, it's not about taking people from hotel school. We're an empowerment, we're an upliftment project. So we're taking people out of the community. The people who built the hotel generally end up, then they move up the ranks. They become a gardener, they move on to manager, they become a host, then they become a guest relations manager. And that's very much my philosophy, is to tell anyone in our organization to dream big. I mean, they can do anything that they want to do. They don't need to stay in a box. You know, the cleaner can become a spa lady, and they do. We train them up, and then the spa lady can move into management. So yeah, I mean, and I think the hotel world is a more enabling environment. As I say, I worked in a very, very sexist, male-dominated environment for many years of my life, where I was often the only girl and the youngest girl on the boardroom table. And some of the comments going around that table, you would hate to hear if I won't put them out in a public forum, but that's literally how it was, you know, and various speculation as how I'd got into my position in that bank. So it was a really hardcore anti-women environment. So I just find this whole tourism business, since I've got in it, so easy for women. I mean, what Suzanne said, women are creative types, they're communicators, you know, this is our business. This is you know, service delivery, looking after people, entertaining them, whatever it might be. That's what women are really good at. So I just think there's so many opportunities for girls in tourism, but don't put yourself in that I'm a girl box. And don't try to be a boy either. I mean, and again, in my business world, originally people used to just, you know, the girls used to dress in very male suits, you know, so that they looked male. And I think we've moved on from that. Girls now must celebrate being girls and just enjoy what they're doing and express, and then everything else follows.
Yeah.
I was and I just said a few weeks ago, I was at Wandware and we had to go and do a morning of dart. It was some conservation work, and it was darting buffalo, and it was quite a lot of like intense things. And I arrived with my little girls to come join the whole morning of, you know, darting and moving animals, all of this. And we got into a vehicle, and Angus was driving the vehicle. The rest of the crew were all female. The vet was female, the assistant vet was female, the researcher was female. And I looked at my girls and I said, girls, this is so cool, you know. And there was this woman with her rifle, and that one was saying, no, that one, and she was telling which animal to be darted, and look at this, and look at that male. And there was this girl with her rifle shooting first shot, and thinking, fantastic. So we actually need to step out of the preconceived idea of what women can be doing, because we can do anything. And there's a generation that is coming up below us who have a most amazing view of what they're going to be doing. I think it's extraordinary, the confidence at which they move forward.
Yeah. Nina, can I go back to you? I was slightly struck by your idea of a modern safari. How do you think women will pioneer the idea of a modern safari compared with the old kind of safari? What do you think a modern safari is, and how do you think women will influence that?
Well, I think what it is really more about the story that you tell. So, for example, all of us actually here together, we all have relatively new products in Africa, and we should be telling a story that is, for example, Tula. Whilst it's been around since the mid-1970s, when we bought it, we made quite a lot of changes to it. But basically, we should be telling the relevant stories about how we're inspired to make Tula what it is today. And the way we were inspired to make Tula what it is through the people that work for us, work with us, and also shareholders with us in our business. That it is a safari experience by Africans, owned by Africans, and told by Africans. And it's got to get away from, you know, let me take you back in time to when hashtag let's make Africa great again. You know, we've got to get away from that old-fashioned narrative around safari, and we've got to start depicting a different picture. If I can give you an example, if you just Google, you know, on images of safari, wherever, you'll often find images where you've got one of these images really killed me. It's a table set up in the Delta with two white people drinking champagne, and two local staff members with their pants rolled up to their knees serving the meal. You know, what does that picture say? Yeah. And for me, I find it offensive. Yeah. This is not an inclusive image. We need to start changing the words that we use about safari. We've got to get away from the old-fashioned narrative. We've got to find the more modern, dynamic wording around it. We must include our staff in this process. And we need to get a much more inclusive, transformed image across to our markets. And if we want to actually survive going forward, guys, we have to start engaging with the African continent. The future is on this continent, and I would like to say that Africa's future is feminine. Africa's future is feminine. Women on this continent are the backbone of this continent. We need to start talking in a language that that will capture their imagination, that will appeal to them.
Do you think that maybe we need to change slightly the product that is offered on the safari? So it is not just go out on a game drive, go out on a game walk, or in Stella's case, go swimming or go on dhows or whatever. It's actually much more interaction with the community, so that the people are as much a part of the product as the environment around. Wendy, what do you think?
So I think people will become more responsible and conscientious travelers. Absolutely. They want to engage with local communities. We see it with our offering in Botswana and in Zimbabwe. It's absolutely.
What sort of things have you got in your camps where you interact with your communities?
So we have local communities where we actually go to. We visit the schools in Ditsipi, our preschool. So we actually take them out and they can actually go and visit this preschool. And then in Zimbabwe, we do exactly the same thing, where we take them to the local school, Wangi Main School, and they get to engage with the children in the schools. And we've had several donations from guests. Our guests are definitely becoming more and more conscientious travelers when it comes to that. It's more about experiential rather than a typical safari, as you were saying, Lisa. You were saying we need to go away in terms of the way that we're selling a safari. I believe that people are definitely traveling for different reasons now going forward, experiential, and maybe that's the reason why they're staying, so it's longer stays. So, yeah. Suzanne?
Yeah.
I think we need to be far braver. I think that this whole thing, safari I think I agree with Nina, and Lindy even asked it on the side over here. It's as a connotation of being a privileged, white thing that we've done in the past, and it's come from a journey, and it's come from a legacy of traveling in Africa, and we love to sell different destinations. And things going into the Congo and maybe walking through water and doing different things. And they say, oh, but we're coming to Africa to go on safari. I'm thinking, going to Mozambique and swimming in that water and with having dugongs and dolphins and mantas, that is as Africa as anything. And it's because of our preconceived ideas of seeing the Serengeti and seeing animals all the time. I think that's a safari. A safari is a journey that should have multiple things.
Yeah.
And we just need to break what the narrative. We need to break the narrative around Africa, and we need to start with a fresh new narrative about what Africa has to offer.
If you're looking forward, what lessons have you learned? Have you all learned that you think need now to be implemented by that you could say to other women, look, I would recommend you do this. This is how we're going to change African tourism and African safaris, and any tips that you might have. Nina.
I think any women that I foresee in our future and taking over in our industry, my husband and I haven't built Tandatula to pass on to our children. We have every intention to pass on this beautiful piece of the Greater Kruger onto members of our community, hopefully men and women, Shangaan men and women from our community, who will then take this product over from us. That is our succession plan. But in order to do that, in order to get to that place, there is without doubt education is a massive has a massive role to play here. So educate yourself, finish your school, finish your high school, learn to read and write, understand what your basic human rights are in order to get away from the gender equality issues in this area. And certainly team up with people that you trust. Team up with people who are already walking a walk that you trust. And learn from them as much as possible. Try and get in there. That's why when we do hire the grandchildren and the daughters of the older women that work for us, they want to work for a company like Tandatula because they know that they have an opportunity to learn more and skill up more and to grow with us. And I think we need to try and get that information out there. So many of us, all of us on this panel are doing such extraordinary work. We need to infiltrate our communities better. And the way to do that, I reckon, is to form partnerships and collaborations with organizations that you trust, whether it's like-minded lodges or it's with NGOs that you trust. NGOs have a fantastic view into communities, ones that you trust and know doing real work. Those are the kind of organizations you need to team up with, because they have a vision into your community. And from there, you can start to handpick youngsters that are coming into this industry.
Yeah. Tina, lovely to see you back. I know you've had an electricity problem, so great to see you back. What would you say some of the lessons that you've learned in running a camp that you would like to pass on to other younger women coming up, and any tips you'd like to pass on to them?
Prepare people to take your job. That you've got to constantly be grooming, guiding, empowering for everyone to, and now I've got children running in the background, to take over from you. And likewise, you've got to, people have got to prepare other people to, the youth coming up through, to take their positions as well, so that you're constantly inspiring the mobility.
Yeah. Stella, what goals do you want to achieve next?
Well, we want to get a few more hotels open and turn Azura into a much bigger group. So that's our primary goal, and get Mozambique back on the map, as I said to you. And in terms of just, you know, my personal experiences as a woman in business is not to class yourself as a woman in business. That would be the first tip. Because you're not. You're the same as everybody else, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing what you're doing in the same way as everybody else is. So don't have this, you know, don't enter the room with a "I'm a woman" hat on, because that's not going to help you at all. You need to go in there saying, "I'm capable of doing this," and that comes across all boundaries and all challenges. I mean, in hotel world, I didn't know anything about hotel world when we started. I've now had to learn about generators and water pumps, which isn't necessarily my skill set, but it's you know, you just embrace it, you get on with it, and say that's what we need to do the job, right? So for me, if I was to say what would my advice be, just believe, be enthusiastic and driven in what you want to do, and the rest will naturally follow. And I do think tourism is a very enabling environment for women. I really do.
I totally agree with Stella, and I have to say, and earn the same amount as well. Don't earn less, because we undercharge, and women accept lower salaries. We do not do that. So I think I totally agree, and I think we stick to our earning capacity in that field as well.
And you can juggle families and working. I mean, certainly there's a lot of faces here. I know, you know, we're all working mums. So, and especially in today's world, I mean, COVID world, I guess a lot more of us are working from home. That helps some of us, certainly, in terms of what we're doing. But yeah, don't be scared of that. You can have a major career as a woman, as a mother. You've just got to want to try.
Do you, we've had a question from outside. Do you see, is improving a lot of your local community one of your motivating drives to running a safari camp? Nina.
Sorry, can I ask you to repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah. Is actually the empowerment of your local community one of the drives that you have in running your business?
Without a doubt. It's probably number one. And, you know, it's very stark and a blinding reality for any of us that work in a rural African situation. You know, you're coming into this world that everything works at a very different pace. And obviously, you know, we are working with extraordinary people, amazing people. In our area, it's the Shangaan people, and they are just naturally imbued with this ability to make you feel welcome and hospitable, and they're just extraordinary people who understand the earth and the sky so intimately. And we absolutely have to focus on empowering men and women. And I'm going to say men and women here because in our communities here, in our greater communities, we have a serious problem in Limpopo where most of the households are being run by teenagers, and there are no male mentors. in our communities. The male mentors, the males are either away in a migrant labor situation, or they are unemployed, and the women have to run the households, or teenagers have to run the household. So we actually have to work on empowering both. I know we're talking about women here, but we have to bring the men into the picture as well. Young boys, and I have a house full of men. I'm just surrounded by testosterone in this house. And they absolutely, and Tina, you'll know, they absolutely need a male mentor. They need a man to guide them in what's right and what's wrong. And when it comes to gender equality, that's where we really need to be helping young men in our communities to understand self-respect, mutual respect, and in a way that's also empowering them in parallel with the women.
Wendy, do you think that women are much more into empowering their communities than men are?
Yes, I would say that. But let me explain, just carrying on from what Nina said. I think what a lot of people don't know is that in Botswana and Zimbabwe, you don't actually physically own your camps. So they're all leased out, right? And you have an agreement with the local community in place. So I'll give you an idea. In Gamoti and in Goma, for instance, you have to employ a certain number of people within the community. And after an X number of years, the lodge actually becomes theirs. So, and a lot of people actually don't know that about camps in Bots and Zim, is that they don't actually belong to you. Yeah. So it is definitely a huge thing for us and all the directors. We huge community-driven lodges. We have a local partner as well who plays a big role in dealing with the local communities together with us. So yes, then to follow on from your question, do you think women
are much more into, so do you think when you've got a passionate woman in a camp or running a safari business, but they are actually much more into empowering their communities than a man might be?
Yes, absolutely. Women are far more empathetic and sympathetic towards other people. They see families and yes, absolutely. I think that's why we work so well together as a team, my husband and I. So yes, absolutely, I do agree that women are.
Yeah. Tina, what do you think?
I think that it's to say that all women are this and all men are that is also, they're great men and they're horrible ladies, and it's just about being a good human. So lose the label black, white, women. Well, give more voices to those who should be speaking more. But I don't think you can say, they're great men, and we've got to, Nina and I are both surrounded by lots of in our own homes, but raise good men, lead by example, and whether you're a girl or a boy, just do the right thing, make good decisions that empower other people, not just for your own gain, because there are women who are all about themselves too,
but I think
men who are all about community.
I think that, why we're focusing on women is in the past they have had limited access to jobs, limited access to education, and limited access to equal pay. And so it's not sort of that we're denigrating men, it's that we're just saying we'd like some women who haven't had the same positions to kind of have the same positions.
Yes, but then there's also another great conversation that could be had, which I'm sure this is the wrong panel, is it shouldn't be a bunch of white women. It should be it should be Africans telling their story, not us dictating what should be done. Just Suzanne, I'm gonna need those friends of yours to rein me in now.
Right, you're right.
Can you lend them?
No.
I need a muzzle, not a mask.
It's something that needs to be said. We've had
this conversation. We've had this conversation quite a few times in preparation actually for this talk. Which Black women are out there that are running businesses and running safari businesses in Africa that we can have on the panel. And the problem is that in the past, there haven't been women running these sorts of businesses, which is why it has to change.
And isn't COVID the most wonderful? I don't know, I've missed so much thanks to Zesco, but I'm sorry about that. I hope you haven't discussed it, but isn't COVID the most wonderful time to break all the old egoic ways of how it was? And it allows, hopefully this allows us to birth a new voice and birth a new way of doing things.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
the duality of balancing houses and zooming from your dining room while your kids are hiding in the background. It brings it all, makes it all very real, that it's not about sitting in the boardroom and doing pencil push-ups. And perhaps it is, this allows us the chance to break that mold and let the proper voices be heard.
And it's much more honest.
Yes.
Because there isn't all of that facade. There isn't all of that facade. You know, we're sitting in our kitchens, we're sitting in our houses, we're sitting wherever we can sit. And this is who we are, and this is what we do. And because we're sitting on our kitchen, it doesn't make us any less powerful.
No, it makes us
more real.
Makes it
More real.
much more real. And I think the one thing COVID, the one opportunity we have to all take out of COVID for every aspect of our business is that this is a time to transform. It's a time to be completely brave. It's a time to be more inclusive. And actually, the big thing that offers us, it's a time to make a mistake. It's okay to mess up now. Do something new. And if it doesn't work, it really doesn't matter. But I think we all need to try something new and do something different and learn from that process as well. Because I think this little wobble in the world has given us an opportunity to just transform.
Do you think the wobble that we've had in the world has meant that more people will think about being more sustainable and more green? And if so, have any of you changed how your models are going to operate to make your camps more sustainable or green in the future? Let's get to Nina.
It's an excellent question. I think I'm not sure that COVID has really brought that upon us. I think it's been on all of our minds, definitely all of us sitting in this panel, we're all thinking in a similar way. I think the COVID has definitely, as Suzanne was saying earlier, and Tina, that you form collaborations with people you never imagined you'd be collaborating with before. And what comes from that is, and it's really amazing, and I feel like I'm just doing it right now. And I feel that you learn so much from each other. And yes, I would like to see, and definitely I've discussed this a lot with Suzanne, that we need to calm down with the safari thing. Pre-COVID, we were over the top. There was so much, excuse my French, crap thrown into the picture. Less is more, in my opinion. We've got to go in that direction. We've got to go lighter footprint. We've got to have longer stays. We've got to have more connected experiences. We've all been talking about that. Really learning, going away from your safari, not I just saw the big five. It's all about really learning something, really feeling like you got into the culture, that you made some new friends, you made some extraordinary connections, and you are enriched in so many ways. And you can only really do that if you're not distracted by all this crap that we all keep throwing into these luxury safari experiences that are just over the top. That stuff has got to stop, and that is really one of my biggest missions.
But all those over the top things that are not green and not sustainable.
Random.
So, you know what I just think of what Stella's done at Marlin Lodge, is taken something that was sitting there for such a long time, and instead of going and creating something brand spanking new, and which I know would be lovely to do as well, taken something that was, the EIA was there, the scar on the landscape was there, and transformed it. And it's supposed to be opening up now. Obviously, we're a bit delayed on that side, but I mean, Stella, to talk more about what you're doing on that, but it's a pared down version of Azura Benguera, and you know, Wendy and Machaba, they've done the same with their camps in the Mana area. It's just to slow it all down a little bit. We're all beginning to strip away some of the capex, because the minute you spend too much money, you've got to repay all of that. So when you spend less capex on something, you've got more opportunities to start giving back a lot sooner. What do you think, Stella?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of CapEx, we're somewhere where you have to put bricks and mortar down. You can't, have tents so much because of where we are. So we're fairly heavily invested in all of our hotels relative to a lot of the product in Africa. But you're right with Marlin. I mean, what happened there was part of the hotel had burnt down, and it really was a scar on the landscape. It was an eyesore. So to take that, redevelop it, it's also on a side of the island where all of those people lost their jobs when that hotel closed down. And we can get that community functioning and operating back as it used to again. So for us, that was an immediate goal. On the green side, one of the sad things for me about this lockdown is a project we were in the middle of, which was to turn Azura Benguera solar. Now, to put that in context, we've got, 22 swimming pools and aircon units and things because of where we are. So that's a big punch to turn that solar. And we were going to be the first people in Mozambique to bring in a Tesla powered power plant, which would have been unique probably, I think not just in Mozambique, but for a lot of Africa as well. So we've had to put that on hold in lockdown, which is a great shame for me. And then when you said new ideas, so we've got another island that I'm busy planning at the moment. And I actually said to my team the other day, I said, you know what, why don't we do the world's first recycled hotel that is completely recycled? Because instead of me drumming up something new and building a whole new paradise, I've got an entire camp that through no fault of our own in the Salou got closed down by the government. I've got it all sitting in storage, and I'm very tempted to just up it, move it, put it back down and say we're the first island-based recycled hotel. So you never know, you might see that coming soon.
Yeah, great.
I love that.
Tina, what do you think about green sustainability?
I think COVID's going to put a spanner with all the sanitizing and pre-packaging, and I hope we don't revert to what was. But I just want to go back to that, talking about the opening up of, so my hope is that it does allow us to pave a little bit more of a green escape. However, I think that having flown back from the States after being stuck there for 3 months and jumping onto a plane where everything was now packed in another piece of plastic and so on and so forth, in terms of keeping it sterile, that let's hope it doesn't become more than that. But you were talking about the opportunity for change, and I don't know if I've missed something, and maybe you have discussed it already. But is it not only with us all becoming far more real and far more transparent about who and what we all are? Is it not also the time for us to decolonize the whole African safari experience and not have us that old way of superimposing what we think African safari should be, and let it be a far more real transactional experience by our own people?
Yes, you did.
I just wanted to. Did I miss that? Did you say that already, Miss Nina?
Yeah, we're completely with you, so I'm glad you're there.
Okay,
I'd just like to throw in there.
Repeat.
Yeah, Nina.
I would just like to say, Tina, I mean, that is seriously the catchword: decolonize safari. Suzanne and I have used exactly that term for the last 2 years. It's time to decolonize completely. And that's in every aspect, whether it's the experience, the narrative, the image, who we're talking to, and what our footprint is, what our impact is, who are we relevant, aren't we relevant? All of that requires decolonizing completely.
In another way, the whole concept of safari is a European concept. Going on safari is partly a European concept of going out. It was how colonial people went out and saw the wildlife. So although the word is, Swahili, I think, the actual concept is a colonial one. So maybe it's about building a new hospitality model that is slightly different to the one we already have. I mean, I don't think you can completely trash a whole industry because it's based on fantasy anyway. It's based on that kind of romance, but you can create surely a whole new model of tourism that is much more inclusive.
And Lisa, I think there are a lot of people out there who still want to come and do a traditional safari, and we've still got to honor that completely. But there is definitely a different market that is coming up in this world, and it's that younger market who wants to engage in a different way. And we've been involved in these something new in with Marataba conservation camps. I'm trying my hardest for not to have a game drive. And everything has to be a total twist of something. And if you're going to be transferring, that is sort of a game drive, but do it in a different way. Engage and think in a different way. Get somebody to view the environment in a different way around you, and truly understand what it means to be inclusive. Truly understand what our land means, what conservation means, and how that transforms communities in the area. Because if you just come there and you look through the single lens, you never get the idea of what's actually happening.
And can I just ask you, if you've been to camps in other parts of Africa, not your own, but you have thought, actually, this is brilliant, this is a way forward, this is something that is going in the right direction.
Yeah. Lisa, can I just backtrack for 1 sec there?
Yeah.
I mean, I find it quite strange that we're talking like this. I think this is why we're in this industry, is that we should be operating like that anyway, decolonizing of safaris, etc. I mean, all our camps should be low impact. I mean, to give you an idea, every single one of our camps, we do a back of house tour for our guests so they can see exactly what we're doing. So the fact that we're talking like this, and we should, I mean, that's why we're in it. I mean, I know for a fact that every single one of the directors in terms of Machaba Safaris, we're definitely doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it because it's low impact camps. We have a completely different offering. It is not just a typical safari. One of the camps, we have a very laid back kind of approach where you can wake up in the morning and you can go on your first game drive at whatever time it is en route to the community area or to the school. So I believe personally that we are, COVID or not, we were doing that. And that is that was our plan when we started building camps. And I think we've done a great job. So I just wanted to backtrack on what Tina and Nina.
And have any of you seen camps that you've thought, actually, this is a way forward, someone else is doing it brilliantly? Like you've talked about, Tina, you've talked about Fogo Island, but are there any others that any of you can think of that you think, actually, that is pretty brilliant?
I want to go to Nina's camp.
I want to go to yours. I'm going to your camp.
I just want to let you know, I may have availability this year. I'm not sure.
Oh, I have to check as well. I must also check.
It's very, very busy.
And what about you, Suzanne? Have you seen any camps that you think are pretty amazing?
I don't necessarily think it's specifically a camp that does anything differently. I think very often it's a destination where you go and you experience something in a new way. But everybody that we deal with, the sort of camps that I choose to go with, are all doing amazingly light touch, immersive experiences. And I think that they're all offering a level of flexibility in what they're doing as well, and getting people involved in different ways. But I think that's one of the areas and for us has been the hardest to sell, has been when you start needing to do an experience in a completely different way. And if you're dealing with a channel that sells safaris, and the channel is too scared to sell something different, they'd rather sell what is comfortable and what they know and what fits into the box. And if you look, even if I go back to something like Zambia is not doing anything differently than what they did 30 years ago. But right now, the fact that you can go off and do these awesome walking safaris and fly into Bengwelu swamps and, have dinner in the rivers and just do things in a real way. It isn't different, it's more real. Yeah. Selling real is harder than selling fluff.
Unless the real that you sell is really exciting and you find really new things that you can offer to people that they're excited by. Like, I went to a drumming workshop not so long ago, and that was kind of amazing because I've heard drums all my life living in Africa, but I've never been to a drumming workshop in the bush in a village. And it was just a village up the road, and they had said, oh yeah, they do drumming on every now and then. Do you want to walk and go with them? So we went to the village, and we sat and we drummed with this village, and it was amazing because it wasn't touristy, it was real. We were sitting in their village on the floor around a fire. It wasn't a tourist drummed up experience.
And I must say, everything we do, I never, when I'm talking about Azura, I never talk about the hotel and the rooms and the whatever. We talk about the experiences while you're there. Because that's what remote, authentic, pristine, mad, and absolutely everything that we do. But I mean, in terms of the community engagement where we are, that's what our guests love. It's the thing they talk about the absolute most. And what you're saying, Lisa, about going and drumming, you know, we've had our hosts take guests into their homes just to sort of experience what's going on. And that, I think, is one of the unique things we can do in Africa, is you don't know. We say every day is different. But yeah, sure, there's a schedule of experiences you can tick the box on, but you're going to chat to somebody and say, oh, can I do that? Could I go and see that? Could I maybe do that? And what we do is we make it happen, right? We make a plan so that can take place. And before we get off the safari topic, you know, and whether you're canning the word, you know, everybody, when they think safari and it's a journey where you involve seeing animals, you all think elephant and lion and little five. So please also think my beach and my ocean,
Yeah.
which is also a safari in itself.
Saying, I mean, a blue safari is so part of Africa. Stella.
Sorry, lost you, Stella. So let's go to Suzanne.
I was just saying, a blue safari is so much part of Africa. We mustn't just think that it's elephants and lions that make up Africa. And then there's just a question that is, you know,
and just going to go there and get a suntan.
Question and answers over here from Jim Holden.
Yeah.
Sorry. So the question that came from Jim Holden was saying the disconnect between modern safari we are proposing and the image and expectations that the market has of a safari. In the USA, the big five is still the main motivator to taking a safari, and it's going to take missionary marketing and preaching at the new safari market, which will take time. And while I totally agree with Jim to a degree, but it's because we're stuck in this old time warp of selling Africa. So it actually, we can do it, but you guys on the trade side who are listening, you need to join this. Don't sell the same thing. It's so yesterday. We are over it. We've got so much more to offer, and we're so much more inclusive, and we're so much more than just seeing these animals. And it's, you know, the perception about an old way of safaris is exactly the perception that we have about where women sit in the industry, or where transformation sits in the industry. We have to all engage and think in a new way, and whether we have to, and it's every single aspect of it. And until we do that, we're not going to get anywhere. And we need to believe it in every sector of it, and we need to transform it on every level. And then we've lost Lisa now.
And can I also point out that I'm done quite a lot of research on philanthropy, and a lot of the philanthropy that happens is because people go on safari originally, and then they meet the people in these communities. And they don't engage with lions, and they don't engage with buffaloes, and they don't engage with giraffes. They engage with the communities and the people. And they keep going back and they keep giving because they met the extraordinary people of Africa. And they love the people. And that's why they keep going back and keep giving. So the people are such a driver. But in some ways, safaris don't sell that enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's... so going forward, what are you going to take out of this COVID break? What changes are you going to make, and how much and what changes do you want to try and make as a result of this break you've had? Nina.
Why always me first?
It's to my next, and I'm thinking of going around in a circle.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have to say what I'm taking out of this COVID thing is the Zoom stuff. For me, I have never been more engaged and I met so many interesting people on all these bloomin' Zooms that are just fantastic. And I find interactions like these so valuable, better than any trade show I've ever been to, where we really get to connect with people and share so much information in our stories. And I feel that it's so genuine and honest. I'm not sitting there trying to sell something. You know, it's really been absolutely amazing. So I would like to see maybe some of that kind of stuff changing. But going back, just repeat your question again. What do I see?
What are you gonna take out of this COVID break? What good things are you gonna see going forward, do you think?
I would like to do an annual lockdown at Tandatula, where I literally and we did a lockdown with all our shareholders. So that was Foreman Matibula and his family, the Jacksons and their kids, me, our kids, and my mom. And we had a skeleton crew of staff there, and actually the most amazing guides, Luke and Chad and Britt, and my social media manager, Shara Berger, were instrumental in like reinventing us during this lockdown period. And we spent so much time together just focusing on who we are and where we want to go. We did it together, we did it inclusively, and I'd love to actually do something like that every year with my team, where we would just kind of nest in, we nest in together at Tandatula for a week or two and really just see where we're going, and stop going with a sort of corporate way of doing strat plans and strat meetings or whatever. I would like to see more of that. But you know, I mean, it was amazing. Yeah. It was horrific.
Okay,
but
we've got a few minutes left, so quickly go around. Wendy, what changes are you going to try and, what changes would you like to see?
So one thing COVID has taught me is how to balance family life, social life, work, everything. It can be done, and I've become a fantastic multitasker, or I've become better at multitasking.
Stella?
Yep, same for me. I've had to learn a lot of new skills in Corona world that I didn't know before, like running our social media and other things like that. But also for me, it's been some vital downtime. And I think those of us who do run businesses and run households, it's a fairly full-on thing. And to be able to take the gap, I mean, I know Suzanne, you've done it, you're traveling with your children, to be able to have the gap, to have some precious me time, some family time. I'll stick my hand up. Okay, I was a little bit selfish about it while I've got the gap. And when you do that, you recenter, and that's when the new ideas are going to flow best.
Yeah. Tina?
Same. It was such a privilege, as crazy as it all was. And Suzanne and I have had lengthy discussions about the people who didn't pay us, but this time together, has been.
I think we've lost you, Tina. So let's go to Suzanne.
I agree on all the time together bits, and that I have to admit, I don't think I've been the best mother in this whole process. I felt that the initial phases was me working every hour of the day, trying to hold everything together. And I was so scared of everything falling apart. So it was relentless. I felt awful. And then I got to the stage and I realized I couldn't do it anymore. And I wanted to take my children away from the four walls and the structure and everything, which was driving me mad. And I made that decision to get onto the road and start traveling. And we've been traveling now since the 16th of June. And that's been absolutely amazing. And I was absolutely petrified at two things. One, I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't really even have a plan. And secondly, everybody said, you're so brave. And I thought, I'm not brave. I'm just trying to jump into something new. And the one thing I've learned with COVID is that we can do something new, and we can think about doing something in a different way. And we don't have to stick to doing everything, and we don't have to stick to what people expect us to be doing as well. So we need to use this time to change our way forward.
Yeah. I think what we've mainly taken away is we've using this time to be brave, to be thoughtful, to reimagine our world, and to make it slightly more positive and more inclusive and just a bit more kind. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being great panelists. It's been super good fun, and I wish we could all just head to the bar now and have a G&T.
Give it a few months' time and we can do that.
It's been really, really good. I hope all of you've taken something from it too. Hope all of the participants have taken something from it. And thanks everyone for being great panelists.